guys, Tristan here with Metroplex Bass Addicts, here to give you tournament breakdown video number 5 on the TTO Texas, stop number 4 on Lake Lewisville back in May of 2021. This tournament was one that Ian and I, whenever we saw the schedule for the TTO, had circled on the calendar because Lewisville is one of our 2 home lakes. It's Lewisville and Texoma are our 2 home lakes, the ones that we fish the most. And so we knew that, you know, the Lewisville event and then the championship event on Texoma would be 2 events that we should have a really, really good, you know, better than average chance of doing really well in the tournament. So we had this one circled, especially because it was May, it was late May, I think it was like 21st or 22nd of May. So we were expecting some, you know, mostly post-spawn fishing, maybe a few fish still on beds if we had a colder winter, which we did. But, you know, maybe fish in all 3 stages and just all around pretty decent fishing, kind of just go pick what you want to do and do it. But that is, of course, not what happened, as is the case most of the time with bass fishing. But the tournament was awesome. It was definitely not, we did well. We placed 30th in the tournament out of 128 teams. We had a limit for like, I think it was 12.5 pounds, but then we unfortunately had some dead fish, so I think it ended up being like 11.5 pounds. But we placed 30th out of 128 teams, so another top 50, which was really good. That was, you know, a time during the season where we were cracking top 50 after top 50, and we just had a lot of momentum, so it felt good, especially considering the way the tournament day started for us, which I'll get to in a minute. But all through practice, you know, since it's one of our home lakes, we practiced for this event quite a lot. We fished Lake Lewisville Friday night working man's tournaments. The weeks leading up to it, we actually have one of those on the channel. It was like our 2nd video, I believe. But yeah, we did pretty all right in those, and we just spent a lot of time on the water between those and then just going out and fishing and practicing for the event. We spent a lot of time on Lake Lewisville practicing, and you know, the weather leading up to the tournament was interesting. Sorry, it was interesting because the water was low coming out of the early spring, and then we got a bunch of rain, and the water level just went way up, and I don't know exactly how high it was, but the lake had to have been at least 5 or 6 feet high during the tournament because there was parking lots to some of the marinas that we like to fish in and around that had water in them, like they were underwater, or at least the first little bit of the parking lot was underwater. So it was high, the water was really high, which meant there was a lot of green bushes and cover in the water. And we, even with all that in the water, we just could never get bit. All throughout practice, we never got bit flipping really all that much, any of those green bushes or any of the trees. Like all the flooded stuff didn't really seem to produce any fish, which was weird. But practice was kind of tough. I mean, we had one decent showing in one of the working man's tournaments, and then we had a few decent days where we caught them on a square bill on some rock piles and stuff, rock points and stuff, but really it wasn't as good as we had hoped. Sorry about that. So yeah, on the official practice day, the day before the tournament, the Friday before, we obviously went out to practice just like the rest of the field, or most of the field did, and we found an area, well, we didn't find it, we already knew the area, but we found a group of fish in one of our favorite areas. The practice day, just for some context, it was super, super hot. It was like probably 80 degrees outside, which for May is pretty hot, and super bright and sunny, almost no wind, like just bright bluebird skies, almost no wind, super sunny, and the water was warm. I think it was starting to get up into the mid 60s and the low 70s by this point, and so we found a group of fish on beds in one of our favorite areas that probably would have been somewhere between an 18 and 20 pound limit, all within about a 15 to 20 foot area. Like, it was ridiculous, the amount of weight we saw just in that small little spot. And we knew other people had fished that area. It's a pretty obvious area, but no one seemed to be keying on that specific spot within the spot. Most people would just kind of go down this bank that it was near and then leave, and they wouldn't really pay attention to some of the areas that are a little bit tougher to get to. But yeah, so we found that group of fish, and we didn't even try to catch them. We just kind of made a mental note of where they were, and we decided that because we hadn't really found much of anything else, we would go and start there in the tournament and see what happened. So fast forward to the tournament the next day, Saturday, and we take off, shotgun start, and we run to this area, and there's only one boat that beats us there, but the weather is just completely different. It's dropped, the temperature's dropped quite a bit. It's raining and like misting out, it's cloudy, there's a little bit of wind, and it's just a complete 180-degree turn in weather from the previous day, on the practice day. So, but we knew the potential of the area that we had was really good because we've seen some tournaments won out of it, and we've done really well there ourselves historically. And so we figured we would try and just see if we could still make it work, even though when we pulled up there, we didn't see the fish that we saw the day before in the same area. So we just figured we'd kind of go down the bank a few times and see what happened. And I think after about 3 hours of fishing that spot and not catching a single fish, we finally were like, yeah, this is not gonna work, and we decided to scrap it, and we left. And so, at this point, we were 18th in Angler of the Year standings at that point in the season, and we were trying to stay in the top 20, and just have a really good year. And those thoughts started to creep into my head of, we got to think of something quick, and we got to figure something out quick, because if we don't, our top 20 Angler of the Year season might be jeopardized if we can't figure something out in this tournament. So we went into search mode, and we decided to go and fish one of our favorite marinas on the lake. And we get there, and there's a few boats in there, but we decided to go in there anyway. And I think we catch like 2 shorts back there. I think I caught one on a square bill, or maybe Ian did, I can't remember exactly. One of us caught a short fish on a square bill, and that was it. And so we were like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. Let's try to run one more marina, and if, because we like to fish marinas on Lake Lewisville. It's a pretty good pattern on that lake for us anyway. So we were like, let's run one more marina, and if it doesn't work, then we'll have to completely scrap this pattern and figure something else out. So we make another run back down to the south end of the lake, and we find this marina, and we go way back into the back of it, and there's a lot of brush and flooded trees and brush and bushes and stuff in the back of this particular marina, and the banks in it are pretty steep. They're quite steeper than almost any other marina on the lake, so it's a little bit deeper back there. And so we just kind of started fishing our way back there, and at the very back there's this little creek, and it's kind of hard to get into the creek. It's barely big enough for your boat to fit in, and you can't really turn around in there. Once you go in there, you have to back your boat basically with the trolling motor back out. But we go in there, and I finally, at about 11 o'clock, and I think stop fishing time was 3. So at about 11 o'clock, I finally land the first keeper of the day on a Wacky Rig. It's like a 2-pounder. And so at this point, we still don't think much of it because it's just one fish and it's not a very big one. But we're like, okay, we have a fish. Maybe we can spend a little bit more time in here, and maybe we're around something. So we kind of fish around there for a little while longer, and then we move out of the creek and we just start going down the bank. And we make our way to this secondary point behind one of the boat slips that has, I'm not sure exactly what it is. I think it might be an old ramp under the water, or like it's just got some kind of big concrete block under the water in like 7 to 12 foot of water. And we're fishing there, and I throw my Wacky Rig out kind of off the bank deeper where I know that concrete is, and I'm just working it back. And actually, we filmed this tournament, it's on our channel, you can go back and watch it. But I look at the camera and I whisper, "This is gonna be a great video." And I kind of give like a thumbs up. And I was completely joking around, because at that point we only had one keeper fish, and it was looking like it was gonna be a terrible video. But right after I say that, I get a bite and I set the hook into a 3.5 pounder, and I fight it back to the boat and we catch it. And so at this point, that's a pretty decent fish, 3.5 pounder, and I kind of called it in a weird way. So we were starting to get excited, and it was our second keeper, and so we're starting to think maybe we have a pattern. Well, basically what I picked up on from those two fish was that the fish were not up on the bank, like tucked up right up underneath those bushes and stuff that were flooded like you would expect them to be in the spring when the water's coming up. They were actually still relating to the original bank line. So they were all sitting in about 6 to 8, sometimes even deeper, but 6 to 8 or 10 foot of water where the original bank is before the water came up, using that edge as like a ledge to basically move it, I guess as a migration route, moving into the creeks to spawn. And they were stopping on secondary points or like bends where they would stage to go back and spawn. And literally just those two fish keyed me in on that. So from that point forward, the rest of the day, we went down the bank about that far off, fishing like 6 to 12 foot of water, trying to target that original bank line on secondary points or on steeper banks on the way into creeks where the fish were going to go in and spawn. And like I said, we ended up catching a limit in the last 4 hours of the tournament doing that, that weighed like 12 and a half pounds. And then we had, like I caught a 3.5 and one that was 4, and then the rest of them were just chunky, like 2 and 2.5 pounders. So we had a pretty decent limit, and we placed 30th in the tournament. Like I said, 30th place out of 128 teams. And we were super stoked to just be, to one, have a limit and place inside the top 50, but also to just do it in the last half of the day and have to completely scrap everything we learned in practice and just adjust and fish on the fly. And we were pretty proud that we were able to make those adjustments and stay mentally tough and put something together. And I mean, that tournament, us adjusting and putting those fish in the boat probably was one of the biggest reasons we were able to end up finishing the year in 20th place in Angler of the Year. We were able to make, you know, the top 20 in Angler of the Year. We finished in 20th. So that was kind of a tournament where it really clicked for us this year, where we started to realize, you know, there's something to kind of just having a game plan, but fishing instinctively, right? Like have a game plan, but whenever it starts to fall apart, don't just get down. Stay positive, keep a positive mental attitude, and fish the conditions for that day and fish your instincts. And I think this year we really got a lot better at that, and it really showed. We had our best season ever. So, but yeah, that's how that went. And like I said, this was it was either our 3rd or 4th video on the channel. You can go back and watch it. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's a really cool video, and you can kind of see the process of us going from 0 to hero in the last little bit of the tournament. So it was pretty cool. But now that I've kind of explained what we were doing, I wanted to talk a little bit about the baits we were throwing. So obviously, like I said, a Wacky Rig was pretty much the deal. Ian did catch the one keeper that Ian caught out of our bag. He caught on a chatterbait, a Z-Man jackhammer, the same chatterbait we've been throwing all year. Just a Z-Man jackhammer chatterbait in this chrome ghost shad color with a white swim bait is all he was doing. The 3/8 ounce size, and yeah, I mean, it was simple. Just he caught that one throwing right up against a bush. That was the only exception. That was the only one that came kind of shallower. He threw it right up against a bush and reeled it out 2 or 3 cranks, and that fish smoked it. And that was the keeper that he caught. But the other 4 keepers in the bag that I had caught, and then we did actually cull one time. We caught plenty of keepers. We did cull one time, and then we had a few more that just didn't help the bag. And I caught all those on a Wacky Rig, like I had said, fishing that original bank line. I have 2 different setups I like to use for a Wacky Rig. In this particular instance, I was making more accurate, shorter casts. I wasn't throwing like super long distance. I was throwing about a mid-distance cast, maybe 20 to 25 yards, and then working it back slowly in that depth zone that I was fishing on those points. So I didn't need a super long rod to make a super long cast. So I was using a 7-foot, this is my standard Wacky Rig setup. It's a 7-foot Denali rods, Riker Series, medium action spinning rod. And the reel is the Ardent Bolt 3000. Awesome setup for throwing Wacky Rigs. The reel has a 6:2 to 1 gear ratio, which is super fast for a spinning reel. It allows me to cover lots of water, but also cover lots of water while fishing a finesse technique like a wacky rig, and pick up that slack line when the fish grabs it and starts running at me. And then the rod is super sensitive. It's a medium action, it's a moderate bend. So it has a really nice soft tip to it. I can work that wacky rig, and at the smallest bites I can feel it and pick up on it, and then just kind of sweep into them and start reeling, and I get a good hook set every time. I didn't have a single problem that day with any fish coming off, and I think it was mostly due to that system, the rod and reel system, plus the fact that I have it on mainline braid. This is 30-pound Ardent strong braid. Sometimes I'll use 20, sometimes I'll use 30. It just depends on what kind of cover I'm using, or what kind of cover I'm fishing around, and what I'm targeting. But I think for this one, I have it on 30-pound Ardent strong braid to a 12-pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon leader. Normally, I will do like an 8-pound leader, but there was some, some brush and some metal dock pilings and stuff around where we were fishing, and we were targeting some bigger largemouth, so I just wanted to have a little bit stronger line. The depth wasn't super important because I was only fishing like 12 feet or less, so it didn't really matter the fall rate as much as I just wanted to make sure that I had line tough enough to wrench those fish out of the dock pilings and the rock and all the brush and stuff that we were fishing. So that's why I upsized to that 12-pound line, whereas if I was fishing up north for smallmouth or something, or if I was fishing Lake Texoma, I would probably have 8-pound leader, 8-pound fluorocarbon leader instead of 12. So that's one setup. That's the one I use for the most part when I'm wacky rigging, and that is the one I was using. And the wacky rig, I was just using it was weightless. I was using a Mustad Titan X Wacky Nico hook. Super awesome, super sharp hook, made for wacky rigging or Nico rigging. Also really good on a drop shot. And so I was just using that hook tied to the end of the fluorocarbon leader. I didn't have any weight on it. It was completely weightless. And then I just had a Bass Pro Shop Sticko, the Bass Pro Shop Cinco bait, and a watermelon red candy color. The other wacky rig setup I'll use is this same thing, just with basically the exact same thing, just with a longer rod. This is my other setup that I use. It's actually a shaky head and Ned rig setup. It's a Denali rods. It's a 7-foot medium heavy. So instead of a medium, it's a medium heavy. And sometimes I like having that medium heavy rod just for if I'm making really long casts, I have a little bit more backbone in the rod to pull into the fish, or if I'm fishing around super gnarly cover, like on Lake Fork or something, and I'm fishing in the timber, then that little bit stronger rod helps me, pull those fish out of that cover a little bit quicker. But that's the other one, is just a 7-foot medium heavy Denali rods N3 series rod. It's the shaky head rod, and then an Ardent C-Force reel, spinning reel. And same thing, 20 or 30 pound braid mainline to a 12-pound or 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, Mustad Titan X Wacky Nico hook, and your Cinco or worm of choice is pretty much the deal. Like I said, I just like that medium heavy rod a little bit more if I'm making super long casts and I need a little bit more backbone on a hook set because I have more line out, or if I'm trying to pitch the wacky rig up into bushes and trees, up into really hard cover. But if I'm fishing it, making shorter casts around more open water targets like docks, or just fishing the front edge of the brush but not really inside it, then I'll use that softer medium moderate rod for my wacky rigging. So those were the 3 setups that we used for this tournament. Really simple fishing. You really can't make it more simple than a chatterbait and a wacky rig, honestly. And yeah, so I will put pictures, I'll put a picture of the bag that we weighed in right now up here somewhere or in front of my face. And then I will also kind of put a picture of an area that's similar to what we were fishing. I'll show you a contour map basically. So all we were doing really, the fish were moving back into the creeks. They wanted to go spawn. They were pre-spawn fish, and they were just stopping on secondary points on inside the creeks on their way in to stage to go back to the very back and spawn. And they were just hanging on that original bank line in like 6 to 12 feet of water. And it wasn't just secondary points, mostly secondary points, but some of them were just down if you could find, you know, a 45 to 50 yard stretch of bank that had a good 45-degree angle drop, it seemed like they were just kind of moving down that depth zone along that bank as well, and then they'd stop on the points. So I'll put a picture of what those points and bank lines look like on a contour map up here right now as well. That way you guys can kind of get an image of it. And yeah, we appreciate y'all watching. I know that we haven't posted a lot of fishing content recently just because we've been busy. You know, it's our off season and we've been busy with school. But so we've been trying to crank out these tournament breakdown videos for you guys. That way there's at least something on the channel new for y'all to watch, and maybe, you know, maybe this will help you go catch more fish yourself. That's obviously ultimately the goal, and why we do this for y'all. But we really do appreciate y'all watching. Please like and subscribe and share with your friends, and let us know what you want to see next. We appreciate y'all watching. Thanks.